Welcome back, everybody, to The Practical Woodsman. I'm Rhett, the creator and host of The Practical Woodsman. That's right. It's my incomprehensible genius which has brought this all into existence. In this episode of The Practical Woodsman podcast, I'd like to learn y'all about a principle I live by, which is simplify, simplify, simplify. Another way to say it is KISS. K-I-S-S. You know what that stands for? Keep it simple, stupid. First, we get to do the musical introduction to get us all in the mood. Winkety, winkety. Don't go nowhere. I'll be right here when it ends.
Put a camp up right here.
All right, got a couple of announcements to make real quick before we get into this discussion. The first thing is that the Practical Woodsman has an online community exclusively over on the Locals platform. If you wonder why I put it on the Locals platform, we've got a feller over there. He wants to show off some how to tan hide, and he is uncertain about whether YouTube and other places would allow him to do that. Facebook, for example. Well, on the Locals platform, he can do whatever he wants. It's a free speech platform. That's why I picked it. Please consider joining us over there. You can do that by downloading the locals.com app from the App Store and then just searching for The Practical Woodsman within. Another way you can do it is just go to thepracticalwoodsman.locals, LOCALS.com in your web browser. It'll come right up. We'll see you there. One other announcement, completely related to Practical Woodsman, is that I have a book available on Amazon called The Apple Tower. It's an anthology of newspaper comic strips. And I was a newspaper comic strip creator and artist there for a while, for a long time in my life. And so this is a collection of all of my comics from the run of a comic strip that I did called The Apple Tower. Give you a nice, real good look at it there. For those of you folks who are watching the show, you're not going to find it under Rut. You're going to find it under Brian. So Brian Barnett. The Apple Tower comic. And it'll pop right up on Amazon. I'll try to include links down here. Anyway, it's something like a 286-page book that has all of my newspaper comic strips in it that I did, and also some goodies in the back, which include like character studies, rough sketches, some paintings and stuff that I've done, and some newspaper articles. So if you're interested in that, I'm really proud of the way that the book turned out, and I hope that you'll run over there to Amazon and order your own copy of it. All right, let's get into this discussion today about KISS. K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. Or the nicer way of saying it is simplify, simplify, simplify. You know, there's a lot of gear nowadays with technology and everything that I can't even believe it. I mean, even since the time that I started doing Practical Woodsman, I can't believe the gear and the gadgets that have come out. Things I would have never imagined. For example, I have right here, for those of you who are watching, for those of you who aren't watching, just listening to the audio, this is a rechargeable water filter purifier. Yeah, just like the ones that we all used to buy. You'd pump, like, what do they call them? Catodins. You just pump them, and then it purifies your water for you and puts it in your water bottle. Well, this is an automatic one, and it's rechargeable. I mean, I can take my battery pack out into the woods with me, plug it into this, charge it up anytime I want. Got a solar panel, right? I'm always carrying a solar panel now. Can keep this thing topped off. No more unpleasant pumping. I just press a button, Zzz, and it does all the pumping for me. So there's stuff like that that I wouldn't have even imagined a few years ago. But here we are. So there's all this technology, all this gear, and I mean, you can't go online, or you can't go to an outfitter store like REI, or you folks overseas there, you know, whoever you go to. You might shop online with Ray Mears, or who's the other guy? Bear Fakery Grills. You might shop with some of his stuff. But anyway, there's no end to the contraptions and the stuff that they're offering nowadays. So I wanted to have a discussion about that, because something I've learned is that most gear complicates rather than simplifies an experience out in the woods. And you wouldn't believe, you would not believe the stuff I have around here that you can't see off camera. There's the tons of gear. You guys would probably be salivating, chomping at the bits to get a hold of some of this gear that I've been sent for free by Amazon and various companies on Amazon to try out, and you know, it's a fantastic thing. I mean, I was just thinking today how lucky I am, how fortunate I feel to be in a situation like that where people just send me stuff. But honestly, very, very, very little amounts of that gear make it into, when it comes time for me to go out into the backcountry on foot, and I'm going to be miles and days away from any civilization, very, very few items that I get sent make it into my bag when I'm preparing to go out into the woods. So I wanted to show off some of that stuff for those of you who are watching. For those of you who are just listening, I'll describe it pretty good. You know, that's something to keep in mind. If you're just subscribed to the audio-only version of this show, consider subscribing to the video version of the show on Amazon, there I go again, trying to sell my book. Consider subscribing on YouTube and on Rumble to the Practical Woodsman there, so you can see some of these things in video format. You know, that's just if you want to. I love my audio-only audience. I'm just giving you an option there. Let's start with this thing that come in the mail today. You know what this is? I'm holding up like a puck-looking thing to folks here on the camera. You know what that is? Let me turn it around. Got any ideas about what that is? That's a clothesline. So it's a clothesline made for backpackers, and it comes like in a puck, a round plastic thing with some string or rope. It's actually paracord hanging out of it. And if I pull that there, well, hang on a second. There you go. So if I pull that there, you can see that paracord extends, and then I can wrap one end of that around a tree, stretch this out to the other side, to another tree, put that around there, and that ties off real nice and tight. And then I can hang my jackets, I can get stuff up off the ground, right? It's a wonderful idea. And when you're done, it has this winding tool on the outside of the puck so that you can roll that string right up. Boy, that seems really nice and handy, doesn't it? But does it really make things all that much simple? I mean, I'm already carrying this, and now I'm holding up just a bundle of regular paracord that doesn't have any of that fancy stuff attached to it. So it's a great idea. You know, I'm happy to try it out one day. But I've been using just regular paracord with nothing fancy attached to it. And all you really got to know is how to wind it around a tree a few times, and how to tighten it and tie it to another tree. And then when you're done, it balls right back up. It weighs less. So it's things like this that I'm talking about, where you've got a gadget now that does all that for you, but it adds weight. There's not enough benefit to the complexity of this to really warrant it, as long as you can really just do the basics of wrapping a line around a tree. You should be seeing some video here of me having done this on this on this spring trip that I took here not too long ago. Me stringing up just regular paracord, and then so I can hang my clothes and dry them and stuff like that. A lot of stuff like that have been coming out these last few years. Just a few days ago, they sent me this. Now, I'm holding up a big bundle like a blanket. Almost looks like a pillow. And let me open this. I haven't even opened this up yet. What do you reckon this is? This is an electric sleeping bag liner. So everybody watching the video here can see it's like a blanket that I'm unfolding. It's got that old hunter's plaid or check, red checkered pattern on it. And down here you can see a button on this blanket. Now this is something I'm interested in getting to try out. What you do is you connect this to a power bank. So it will require carrying a power bank. And you are probably going to run, if it's on a frigid night, you are probably going to run that power bank out, cold stone dead by the next morning. But the idea of having an electric blanket deep in the woods on a frigid night, oh boy, that sounds awfully nice, doesn't it? Like I said, I haven't had this out yet. I just pulled it out. Man, that's soft and comfortable. Goodness gracious. It's got a non-slip bottom on it. You just set that down in your sleeping bag, climb in on top of it. You have that heat, probably for one night, coming up off that electric blanket. Man, a couple winters ago I went out. I mean, it was frigid. You guys probably get tired of hearing me say it, but it was about 10 degrees was the high during the day, Fahrenheit. And it was frigid. And I could just imagine having something like that with me. What I've done till now as kind of a little trick to get around that is using hand warmers, these chemical hand warmers. And then a couple years ago, I said, well, I wonder if I could do that with like electronic hand warmers. So I got some electronic hand warmers. They have the same problem, meaning that, and I'm not sure that this big blanket here will provide a better warming experience than just these hand warmers here. And the interesting thing about these hand warmers, these electronic hand warmers, is that they serve a dual, triple, quadruple purpose. You can put them in your pockets, you can jam them down in your socks, you can stick them up under your arms, you can hold them in your hands to warm your hands up, you can throw them in your sleeping bag or underneath your blankets, and they should heat up the underneath of your blankets the same as this big bulky electric blanket would do. I'm still looking forward to getting this electric blanket out there and seeing. I wouldn't use it every night. I would just use it on like a really, really frigid night. But my goodness, I can imagine that would put you right to sleep. But these hand warmers have the same problem that this blanket's going to have. It's going to completely expend probably, it'll probably expend a 10,000 milliamp hour power bank overnight. That thing will be completely dead the next morning, and then what do you got to do? Well, you've got to be in camp long enough to power that back up using your solar panel. I know you've seen these videos of folks slinging those solar panels over their backs, hiking all day, getting into camp, and then their power bank is completely powered up. It doesn't work that way. I promise you, that's never going to happen. That's not the way those things work. In order to get a proper charge, you need to set up your solar panel at a tilt in a set position long enough to get in direct sunlight, long enough to charge anything significantly. Anything else, you're only going to get maybe a 15% charge on your power bank. So what does that mean then? It means that this blanket, these electronic hand warmers, once they're spent, I'm probably never going to get a full charge on them again because I have to travel every day. And, you know, let's say that I got to do 30 miles or 40 miles. Well, that kind of determines, doesn't it, the minimum amount of miles that I'm going to have to cover every day. So when am I going to get the time to have a stationary solar panel just sitting there and charging something? Well, the only 2 times of the day are going to be in the morning and in the evening. So that means if I want to charge these up again and get a full total charge on them, I'm going to need 3 or 4 hours uninterrupted in camp with good daylight. And what, you know, we're coming into the winter season here in the northeastern America. And that means less sunlight, less quality sunlight. Your best sunlight's going to be at 10 o'clock, 12. If you got a long day to cover and you get into camp and it's 5, 6 o'clock, sun's already going down. I mean, around here in the dead of winter, by 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's already going to be dark. So think about how much that cuts down the time that you're going to have for both charging something with a solar panel and having time to travel any significant distance on foot. So my whole point with that, all that stuff, is that I still think that these chemical hand warmers are superior, because you're not stuck packing around something that's dead and can't do anything for you. Why do I say that? Because as these hand warmers run out, you just toss them in the fire and you're done with them. So as long as you're carrying these chemical hand warmers, these, by the way, these are the things where you open up the package, you shake them, and then they've got like a chemical thing on the inside of them that, because of chemical reaction, begins to heat up. And these work just as fine as these electronic hand warmers. So maybe you carry 10 of them with you, and you say, well, that puts me at a disadvantage, because if I'm carrying these electronic hand warmers, I only have to carry 2. Yeah, but once these run out, if you don't have an opportunity to recharge these, then you're just carrying dead weight. You're carrying something that can't do anything for you as long as it doesn't have a charge. Whereas with these these chemical hand warmers, once they're done doing their thing, you toss them in the fire, and your weight every day is getting lesser and lesser and lesser, rather than carrying the same weight or having to carry dead weight out of the wilderness with you. So there you go, another perfect example of where the technology is producing all these really neat gadgets that give me, and I'm sure they give you too, all sorts of wonderful ideas about, man, I'd like to try this and I'd like to try that. But at the end of the day, the simplest thing is probably still the best thing. These chemical hand warmers. You know, they'll generate heat, shake a few up, throw them in your sleeping bag. I do it all the time. And I mean, it feels like having a warm body in the sleeping bag with you. It's fantastic. Anybody who says, oh, weight don't bother me, I don't give it no mind. Nope, weight's not a consideration I even think about. I don't pay it no mind at all. Whoever says that is not ever going into the wilderness. They're just not. Because anybody which requires going on foot, by the way, you cannot drive a side-by-side out into genuine wilderness. These people who are talking that way and shooting these videos, they're just up over the hill from their house. They've driven up there on an all-terrain little vehicle. And so, of course, they don't care about weight. But anybody who's ever traveled into the backcountry, for real, on foot, cares about weight. There's just no way around it. I'll tell you here, possibly in a little bit, some stories about, I grew up in the woods in the backcountry. Well, that's not true. I wouldn't say in the backcountry. Well, I grew up in the deep woods, and I used to go often into real backcountry. We were surrounded by thousands of acres of just forest everywhere. But, you know, there were folks living out there. That's why I hesitate to say that it was actual backcountry, because even at a young age, I got so familiar with those woods that I knew which direction to go to arrive at some road or arrive at somebody else's house, or, you know, whatever. So I can't say that it was so remote that, you know, I was at risk of not seeing anybody for days or weeks at a time. It's amazing to me that when you're a child, and this isn't blowing smoke up my own skirt. If you grew up the way that I grew up, and you were a child, it's amazing to me how quickly children, without all the fears of dying and fears of getting lost and stuff like that, how quickly children develop a sense of direction, like this innate, natural sense of direction. It's amazing. So that's within you somewhere too. And if you're not able to tap into it, it's probably because of fears of not calming yourself down and allowing yourself to tap into that. You know, not trusting instinct. Because I'm telling you, even children have it. I had it, my brother had it, I had cousins that had it. While we're on this subject of, what was I going to show off to you? Oh, so while we're on the subject of batteries lasting about one night, you know, you thinking you're going to go out there and you're just going to, every night you're going to turn on an electric blanket or your electronic hand warmers and you're going to run them all night and they're going to last you for a week-long trip in the middle of February. Probably not the case. You see this puck here that I'm holding up? These are those string lights that I took out on a recent trip, and I'll show you some video of that here while you guys are listening to me talk. So it works the same way as that clothesline. You pull it out, and then you can wrap that around a tree, you can drape that over bushes or whatever, and then you turn that on, and it's just these really mellow string lights, nice orange little glow there, and man, that really creates a nice atmosphere around camp. And I thought, well, even if I don't want to use those as string lights, I can still use that as a lantern. First time that I hung those up, and I put them on the lowest setting, the whole thing was dead before the end of the first night. I mean, before, it only lasted maybe 5 hours. Well, the next day I had to try to charge that thing. I was really disappointed in that, because my idea was, well, I'm just going to run this thing every night. I'll be able to charge it every day, and it didn't work out that way. So I kind of ended up carrying some dead weight again, just a dead thingamabob, you know, a gadget that then wasn't doing anything for me, but I still had to carry the dead weight of it around. So just to throw that on the back of that conversation we were just having about that sort of situation, it's a wonderful idea, and I love the idea of having it out in the woods with me. But it might be just complicating things. I mean, it's a nice thing to have. Yeah, it's probably just complicating what does not have to be complicated. You know, when you go onto the internet, or you're watching certain people on the internet telling you how wonderful and awesome a thing is, they kind of sell it, don't they, as essential. That's true with a lot of this high-tech gear. Satellite GPS, standalone satellite GPS units and stuff like that. GPS watches. Can you think of any ways that a GPS watch is simply going to complicate your life out in the woods rather than simplify it? Solar chargers. I have a solar charger packed into every one of my bug out bags, and I never go into the woods anymore without a solar panel, solar charger. But like I said, it only took one time out with a solar charger to figure out that it don't work the way they would like you to believe it works. It's not as efficient as they pretend it is, and it comes with its own additional complications, such as I was trying to explain earlier. You need prime time daylight in a fixed spot in order to get anything significant out of your solar charger. That means that your traveling time on foot is really, really cut down. You can get some in the morning. Well, you know how sunlight works. If it's a sunny day, you can get some of that prime sunlight in the morning, but that's not the prime sunlight, because when do you get the prime sunlight? Well, that you don't get that until like noon. But between like noon and 2 o'clock is when you get that sunlight that is really strong and is really going to charge your solar panel the most effectively. All the other stuff is kind of like second-rate sunlight. You know, that sunlight 2 hours before sunset, it's not putting off the energy. You're not going to take in the energy as you could off that sunlight at noon, or, you know, between like noon and 2 o'clock. So those are things that you just learn. And so the experience of doing it and trying it out in real-world circumstances, our real-world conditions, kind of completely dispel all of these these foolish preconceptions, misconceptions about the true nature of how this gear, how beneficial this gear really is or is not. Think about all the multi-purpose tools that are being sold out there, where you might end up just using one or two of the features, you know, and then what does that mean? It means you're carrying stuff you don't need to be carrying because it's not practical. Of course, all that stuff adds unnecessary weight, cost, complexity. Now, sometimes that complexity is justified. Is that the word I'm looking for? Sometimes complexity is worth the complexity. So I think of like solar panels. I think that is complexity that is worth its weight, worth its complexity. Because, you know, we for example, now all of my headlamps, all of my flashlights, all this stuff, these are all rechargeables. And having a solar panel then with you is kind of a no-brainer. Yes, it does add some complexity. No, you can't just switch out the batteries. But it offers simplicity in a lot of other different ways. So I'm not having to carry, you know, a ton of, you know, the way it used to be just 5 years ago was that I would carry packs of batteries, spare batteries. And then I might not even use those batteries, so when I would go out the next time, I would be transferring, you know, like the old stuff that I didn't use from the first trip. Might be transferring those over to the new pack, but let's say that now I don't know about those batteries. How much juice does those batteries have in them? I don't know. So what I would a lot of times end up doing is just end up throwing perfectly good batteries away and putting brand new batteries into my pack for this new outing into the woods. So, you know, there's a lot of waste going on there, a lot of decisions like that were made to make sure that everything I'm packing is completely fresh. I'm not going to be left empty-handed or with batteries that aren't working or that don't have much juice in them. Nowadays, yes, there are some complexities about carrying a solar panel and having all of my devices be rechargeable. But I don't have to worry about not having energy unless it just rains for 2 weeks straight and you don't ever see the sun. Then you're in trouble. In that case, you have to be wise enough, insightful enough to use all of your devices that require electricity, to use them very sparingly. So if I were in a situation like that, I wouldn't be running a lantern all night long. I'd be running it like an hour here, an hour there, turning it off when I go to sleep and stuff like that. Same thing with the phone. I'd be powering the phone completely off. I'm not talking about just turning the screen off. I'm talking about powering it down completely and only powering it on when I needed to use it. So the focus should be on multi-use items, things that provide you, for example, like this. Let's go back to this clothesline. Well, I don't know where I put the clothesline, but the clothesline kind of has a single purpose, doesn't it? Well, what about just my regular paracord? What about just a regular bundle of paracord? Does it only have one purpose? No, it's got multiple purposes. I can use this to hang my food. I can use this to tie together a tripod. I can use this for a myriad of uses. We're not going to go through them all here right now, but that's what I can do with just a bundle of paracord. But when you design it into a puck like that, with wind-up gear and all that stuff, and it's specifically that is made for wrapping around a tree, hanging clothes, and then being able to take that down easily. It's not going to have as much flexibility as just the simple bundle of paracord is going to have. That's what I mean by multi-use items. So if it comes down to this bundle of paracord, which I can use for anything I want, or it comes down to that puck, and it comes down, I'm trying to figure out how to pack my bag, and I got to decide between the two, which one do you think makes more sense to go with? It makes sense to go with just the paracord that can be used for anything I want it to be used for, rather than the thing that is pre-designed for one purpose. You ever hear of this just-in-case packing? I do this just-in-case packing. And it's not too bad as long as you keep your just-in-case packing underneath a certain weight. But what causes it is this fear of being unprepared. So you start packing things that you're trying to think of any possible eventuality that you might encounter, and you're packing for that, which is not a bad thing. I do that. But it can get carried away. Extra utensils, extra pots and pans, backup gadgets, stuff like that. Emergency beacons when you're not really in that much of a remote area. That adds extra weight, takes up room in your pack, and you never end up using it. You never end up using that stuff most of the time. Now, there's a few things that you don't want to skimp on, but as far as well, I'll give you a perfect example of a what-if item. I'll give you a perfect example. Right here. Binoculars. Binoculars in the backcountry are definitely a what-if item. It's such a luxury item. About 5 years ago, I've always had better than perfect eyesight. But back right around 2009, a little boy that my ex-wife and I were babysitting I did not know that he had it, but he had his father's laser pointer. And I was standing at a table doing some work, and all of a sudden I felt this pain in my right eye. And I turned over and, whoa, what's that? And I turn over and look at him, and there he is giggling with that laser pointer. He had shined it directly into my pupil from a distance of about 20 feet. And I ran over there and I snatched that out of his hand, but I knew the damage was already done. I remember thinking, that is going to come back and bite me. Now, I couldn't be mad at him. He was just a child. He didn't know better. I was mad at his dad for allowing that little hellion to get a hold of his laser pointer. But I thought, I'm going to pay for that. So that was about in 2009. Well, in about 2016, I realized everything I tried to see, usually later on in the day, was very blurry. Anything I wanted to see at a distance. Now, my my up-close vision is still very, very good, especially for my age. I'm about to turn 50. And I don't need any glasses or anything for looking on my devices, reading, nothing like that. In fact, the settings on my phone and on my devices are like the smallest settings that you can make your text size. And I kind of do that on purpose because I want to keep my eyes strong. I want to keep them exercising and strong, focusing on that small print. But that's neither here nor there. My point is that it's my distance vision. And it's only in my right eye. But because my left eye ends up carrying so much of the weight of trying to see things in clarity at a distance, that my left eye gets tired the longer the day goes on, and so then everything looks blurry to me. Why am I telling you all that? I'm telling you all that because I have to use glasses. Well, let's say it this way. If I want to see in HD, I have to use these glasses for distance vision. I use them for watching TV, and that's about all I use them for. Why do you figure I don't carry them? I do carry them into the woods sometimes, but why do you reckon that I don't generally wear them when I'm in the woods? Because I've never been used to wearing glasses, and I don't like the frames. Like the frames around here make me feel claustrophobic, like I'm blocked in. Or when I'm out in the backcountry, it's blocking part of my view. So part of the reason I'm out there is so I can see just the beautiful, vast expanses of trees and valleys and those sorts of things. I put on these glasses, and now I feel like I'm looking at the world through like a television screen or something. So even though, as the day goes on, I might not be able to see in the perfect detail and clarity at a distance that I used to be able to see in. When I'm out in the woods and I'm out in the true backcountry, I prefer to go without my glasses. I would rather see things uninterrupted, even if they're slightly blurry at a distance, than to see them through the frames of some glasses where it's like I'm looking through a window. I hate that. So I tell that story to tell you that binoculars, if I can get by without my glasses, you can definitely get by without your binoculars, can't you? Now, there have been times I've come up on a mountain and stuff like that, and I've thought, oh boy, I'd really like to see this through the binoculars. And I'll sat down, take out the binoculars, and scan the horizon and everything. This is such a luxury. It's such a luxury. It's not out of necessity at all. It's not like I'm going to see a cabin down there and go, okay, we got to make it to that cabin. No, because I've already got a route in mind, and that cabin is probably not in the way. So while these binoculars are great fun, you can get them, obviously in different sizes. These are best for like bird watching, going to a national park, those sorts of things. As far as being out in true backcountry, out in the wilderness, these sorts of things, they're just a what-if item. They're just a what if I come up on something it would be fun to look through the binoculars. Well, what else about binoculars? They take up space, and they add a lot of weight to a pack. They add a lot of weight to any pack. And by the way, if you think you're going to save any weight by getting a monocular instead of a binocular, you're not. You're going to be carrying about the same weight, and instead of being able to see through two eyes, you're going to be looking only through one eye. So it's an inferior experience anyway. So I will say that if you're considering getting a monocular or a binocular, or binoculars, I should say, to possibly carry in your pack from time to time, don't mess with the monocular. Just go ahead and just get yourself a pair of binoculars, because the weight savings and the size savings and everything is just not, doesn't warrant not just getting binoculars. So those are the types of items I'd call like what-if items. You might think that hand warmers are a what if item. Well, they're a what if item if you're in an area where you get proper winter. You get all 4 seasons. So if you're in a place like that where you get proper 4 seasons, and you're taking out hand warmers in May because you think, well, what if there's a cold snap? What if there's a really frigid cold snap? I mean, come on. That's a what if type of pack, and you don't need your hand warmers for that. As long as you've got the proper layers and proper sleep system and stuff like that, you're not going to need hand warmers, electric blankets, stuff like that. In June, summer's already started, but you're like, what if there was this freak cold spell that just blew down from the north, and all of a sudden we got temperatures down into like 30s? Well, you should be prepared for that as far as your sleep system goes and your layers go. But all this extra what if stuff is just overkill. It's going to be weight that you're just going to end up carrying pointlessly. Embrace the wilderness experience by really figuring out what are essentials and what are just luxury items. And speaking of luxury items, there is luxury gear that it really hinders a connection to nature. Usually it's gear designed for comfort. I know a lot of folks like hammocks. Do you know why I don't like hammocks? Because it forces you always to sleep in a certain type of spot, meaning you're always going to need a couple trees. Well, what if I want to sleep out in the middle of an open field? What if I want to sleep right next to a gurgling creek, but there aren't any close trees there? Also, I like to be able to get into my shelter, move around, do things, do certain work and stuff like that, and have complete and total freedom of setting that thing down anywhere I want to set down. I can do that with my shelter. It's a floorless TP system. You can't do that with hammocks. Also, I've tried the hammock system. I thought that it would simplify things because you're just taking a hammock, right? It doesn't matter how hot in the middle of summer it is. You're still going to need insulation because at like around 4 o'clock in the morning, even in the dead of summer, because of the way that the hammock is set up, it's taken all the heat from your body away. Underneath of you, on top of you, you will get cold. Well, now imagine that you're carrying a hammock in the middle of the wintertime. Now you got to carry not just a sleeping bag, but also an underquilt. You've still got to have some type of cover over top of you. So there's no weight savings in a hammock setup. There's no weight savings, and it actually limits you rather than opens up more freedoms and more flexibility. So I prefer to go with a system where I've got a shelter, I'm on the ground any day of the week. Pillows, that's a luxury item. And that can hinder your connection with the natural world, believe it or not. Portable chairs, of course, for most of my life I've gone without any portable chairs. But there's another area where I think the complexity actually is worth the complexity. Went out one time where it was just raining and muddy and nasty and the whole time. And I never really got any relaxation. So at the end of the day, I'd be hiking through pouring rain all day long, through mud. And then I'd get set up in camp. And I couldn't even relax to have my supper because there was nowhere comfortable or dry to sit. And the only place where I could end up sitting was like down in this mud, in these rocks. And, that's not a big deal if it's just like here and there when that's happening. But when you've already been hiking, you're soaking wet, and you've been hiking all day long for like 10, 12 miles in rain and mud, at the end of the day, man, you really want some dry comfort. And so it was after that trip where I decided, well, I consider a stool, at least a stool, like a tripod stool or an ultralight chair, not necessarily an absolute necessity, but I absolutely want one with me. And I've been, without fail, taking one with me since then. So are you going to die without it? No. But does it measurably affect you? Yeah, it measurably affects you if you never get rested. If you never get rested, if you never experience any comfort at all, that does physically, emotionally, and mentally affect you. If you're just miserable the entire time, that absolutely affects you. It affects your clarity of thought. It affects everything. It affects how well you sleep at night. So if I can avoid all that by simply taking an ultralight, figuring out a way to include some ultralight sitting system, just something to keep me up off a muddy ground or a wet ground while I eat or while I sit around the fire or while I'm cooking and stuff like that, absolutely. I think it's absolutely worth its weight and complexity and the space that it takes up in a pack. But as far as like pillows go, I mean, it's an individual thing, ain't it? I mean, like I just got done talking about how this loss of comfort, this complete absence of comfort, eventually it has a measurable effect on you. Well, some people are like that with pillows. I'm not that way with what I sleep in. I sleep in my clothes. And typically what I've done for all my life is I just throw my not my sleeping bag. I throw down my backpack and I rest my head on my backpack. So my backpack is typically my pillow. And I like that. I sleep just fine, usually. What about camp showers? Now, there's a ridiculous thing right there. And I got one right here. Let me show you. This is that I'm showing up to the camera here. This is like a mesh pack, and it's got this a rechargeable pump in it, and a hose and a shower head. I got this for camping. I didn't get this for going out into the real backcountry. But can you imagine somebody taking something like this? I can. I'll tell you something. I went out last year. Was it last year or the year before? Okay, well, recently. On a recent trip. And I'm not kidding you. We got 40 miles in and come across a pop-up tent. I'm not making that up. 40 miles back in the woods, somebody had carried a pop-up tent on their back. And what I imagine is that somebody who knew what they were doing invited this person who didn't know what he or she was doing. And the person says, oh, I'll just take a pop-up tent. Well, those things are not light. And, they got 40 miles in before they realized. I would rather sleep on the ground or, without any shelter whatsoever, rather than carry this another foot. And they just left it there. Big old pop-up tent. So, when I'm talking about, can you imagine somebody carrying this out into the woods like 30, 40 miles back? Yes. There are people who would do it. Either out of pure inexperience or ignorance or just stupidity. But they will do it. So, don't worry about stuff like that. That's definitely carrying a shower with you is not KISS. That is not keeping things simple. That's instead unnecessarily complicating things. What's the easiest thing? The easiest thing is to be okay being dirty and smelly for a few days. I do take soap with me. I have many times jumped into a creek, freezing cold creek, and washed off and stuff like that. But, the most practical thing in the whole world is just to take yourself some wet wipes, clean under your arms, around your crotch about once a day, and then be okay just being grimy and like Pigpen off of the Peanuts cartoons. It's not going to kill you for a few days. And in fact, if you're out there for like a whole week and you come out and you haven't really bathed the entire time, and you get in, you get back to your car, you get into the nearby town or city or something, and then you check into a hotel for that night, I'm telling you what, you will not experience a better shower in your entire life. It's like being born again. I'm telling you, it feels awesome. So, you can't really experience just the deliciousness of a shower like that unless you're willing to get really filthy and dirty and stinky for a week or so. So instead of focusing on all these modern conveniences and stuff, maybe I'd like to recommend that you kind of get used to the raw simplicity of nature, getting into touch with the raw simplicity of nature and the fun that involves. Of course, there's a lot of other things. I want to talk about the complexity of like specialized cooking systems, high-tech stoves, cooking kits. I like to carry a kettle, a cup, and a water bottle. And that's about what I carry. I do have a titanium plate that I take sometimes with me. And I'll tell you the reason why I like my titanium plate is because if I'm cooking a stew or anything like that, I have something there where I can keep things up off the ground. If I'm cutting taters, cutting carrots, I can put all that stuff in there in that plate. I can use the plate for other things. And so it comes in handy for more than just eating on it. But that's about the complexity of my cook system. Basic campfire cooking, that's what I prefer. I most always try to use the campfire. I do take a little propane stove with me, very small and compact, but I'm not using it to cook the complicated stuff. My portable cook stove and the fuel canister, or maybe sometimes I take an alcohol stove, pop can stove. But really the purpose that serves is as a backup. It's more of like an emergency item if I can't get a proper fire going or anything like that. But it's also for quick things. So if I don't have a fire going, but I want a hot cup of coffee or something like that, I'll get my canister stove out for that. In the morning, before I've had a chance to get the campfire stirred back to life, a lot of times I'll get my canister stove out so that I can get a hot cup of coffee in me while I'm working on the fire and doing other things around camp. So that's the way I do it. So, we're running out of time here. There were so many other things. Here's some things that I wanted to mention to you that I don't believe are optional. These are things I would not go into the backcountry without. My shelter. So no cutting down trees unnecessarily and building these stupid, childish forts. Oh, there's no reason to do that. You can take a shelter. It can be a tent, a bivvy, a tarp. But something like that, I think, is absolutely a necessity. Sleeping system. That would involve sleeping mat or sleeping pad, air mattress, along with proper amount of insulation for like a sleeping bag or blankets. You guys know me. I prefer blankets. I think there's a lot more flexibility into having like 3 blankets that I can layer up. I'm talking about like down blankets. And, I think soon I'm going to be doing a show on the benefits of synthetics over down. I've really, as time has gone on, I've really began to really value synthetics because they don't absorb any moisture at all. They breathe better. They don't absorb odors and stuff like that. And so you might be seeing me do a show on that. But anyway, sleeping system, that your sleeping bag, stuff like that. Ways of starting fire. That's another, it's a non-negotiable. And preferably, and the way I do it is I carry at least 3 different ways of starting fire. So that would be my ferrocerium rod. I'm never without a ferrocerium rod, usually without a couple of ferrocerium rods. And tinder, and matches, and lighter, And now I'm going to carry in like these electronic, I think they call them piezo lighters. So multiple ways to start fire. Number 4, a way to transport and boil water. Of course, that means a water bottle and a mug. One that can go right in the fire. If your cook mug or drinking mug can go right in the fire, there's no reason for your bottle to have to be able to go into the fire. I completely disagree with other people who talk about these things, who insist that you must have a water bottle that you can jam into the fire. I think that's ridiculous when you have a cook mug. You know, you got a cook mug that you're eating out of, you're drinking out of, and stuff like that. As long as that can go in the fire, your water bottle doesn't have to be able to. But, you know, clean water is essential. And so you need to be able to have something that can be shoved right into the fire like that. And you absolutely need a way to transport water. You can't just rely on drinking your fill at a creek, and then you're going to make it to another water source and you just hopscotch like that. No, you need to be able to carry water and be able to drink along the way. That's absolutely essential. Food, number 5, is non-negotiable. Number 6, the proper footwear, boots. You have to have boots. You have to have proper footwear. I mean, your feet are everything out there. And if your feet aren't comfortable, I mean, it will affect everything else. Number 7, proper clothing. And, you know, right along the lines of that, of boots, of having proper boots, is spare socks. I think spare socks are right up there among the most important things that you can possibly pack. Even wool, really nice wool socks. I know they're antimicrobial and all that stuff. But even your antimicrobial stuff is going to get gunky and nasty. And your feet are going to feel nasty and soupy. And you're going to find yourself in situations where you can't just wash those off at night and have them dry the next day. So if you at least carry one spare pair of socks, that you can rotate those things. And I do that all the time. Get into camp, wash a pair of socks that I've worn all day long, put on my fresh socks. By the morning, hopefully, my wool socks that I've hung up, you know, washed and hung up, are going to be dry and I can change them out. But if they're not dry yet, well, then I can hang those on the back of my backpack, keep the socks that I slept in on, hike all day. By the end of the day, they will be dry, and then I can then rotate them again, switch them out. Along with proper clothing, that means multiple layers. You definitely, I'll show you, I want to show you, this is what I wear on a regular basis. Now, you see this jacket here? This is like a hard shell, not really a hard shell. This is a soft shell jacket, but it's got like this hard outer polyester thing to it. That's supposed to block wind. These things are fine, and I really love these jackets. They look great. I mean, they look very sporty and cool, but I overheat in them. When I'm hiking along, they don't breathe enough for me, and so I end up, they block wind so well, I usually end up overheating in them. So what I like is like a soft shell like this, which is like a fleece. And if I'm wearing, you see what I'm wearing right here, you guys watching the video, I'm wearing a t-shirt with a button-up shirt over top of my t-shirt. That's the way I dress. I love this arrangement, because if I get too hot, I can take my outer shirt off. If I get too cold, I can put my outer shirt back on. If I get really cold, I can roll the sleeves down. You'll notice I'm always wearing one of these shirts with the sleeves rolled up. That's for flexibility. That's just my daily flexibility. If I go to a movie, I start to get cold, I can roll my sleeves down. But most of the time, I'm walking around with these sleeves rolled up like it's a short sleeve shirt almost. If I get too hot, take this off. So anyway, I would be wearing something like this And then around camp or while I'm hiking along, I would take off this outer shirt and I would put this fleece on. I hike along with this fleece on. What if I get cold or the wind is passing through my fleece or anything like that, or it starts to rain? Well, then that's when this other jacket comes out. And this is like it's an outer shell / rain jacket. So this would go on top of all that. And what that does, I've got all that insulation beneath this, and this is blocking wind from passing through. It's blocking rain from getting in. And it's so lightweight. This thing packs down. Look how this thing packs down. That's my whole outer shell right there. 4 Seasons outer shell. It's literally it's just like a solid outer membrane that goes over my insulation. But it works for so many things. So anyway, I just want to show you that off. That's my system. One other layer that I would add is I would have like a wool long john. So if I wanted to, I could take this outer shirt off, put a long sleeve wool long john over top this t-shirt. And by the way, I wouldn't be wearing this cotton. This is all cotton. I wouldn't be wearing this cotton. I'd be wearing wool or synthetics. So I would probably have like a wool t-shirt on. I'd take off this outer shirt, put a wool long sleeve long john on top of this, then my button-up shirt. Then I might take off the button-up shirt, put on my fleece, then I might put on this over top of that. Now what if I'm still cold? Remember, I've still got my button-up shirt. So I could take off the jackets, put my button-up shirt over top of my t-shirt and my long john, roll the sleeves down, put the fleece back on, put the outer layer on, which is like keeps rain from getting in, keeps wind from passing through. That's the way I do it. That's the way I like it. It's very flexible. Love it. Might give you some ideas. So proper clothing is number 7. Number 8, you need some kind of cutting tool. So Swiss Army knife's always in my pocket, but these saws, they're awfully nice too, like these Gomboy saws. A belt knife, proper. That's not a knife. This is a knife type of knife. So I think those are kind of non-negotiables anytime I go out. Folks, we've run out of time. I appreciate you joining me for this episode of The Practical Woodsman. Don't forget, run over to Amazon. Buy my book, The Apple Tower, by Brian Barnett. Why Brian? Isn't my name Rut? My name is Rut. My name is Brian Russell Barnett. And so now you know. I'm both Brian and I'm Rut. So for the Practical Woodsman, I like to go by Rut. If I had my druthers, everybody would call me Rut, but there's people I grew up with who know me as Brian, then there's other people who know me as Rut. You guys, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate you keep calling me Rut, even if you do buy my book. All right? So y'all take care. I'll see you in the next episode of The Practical Woodsman.